Well, good evening.
Good evening. Hey, Charles.
Nope.
I'm Kurt Thomas.
David Simmons.
Charles Smith.
And welcome to the November 9, 2013 webcast of ArtStreamLIVE. We appreciate you joining us tonight and watching.
Right.
And we got some interesting topics we want to talk about tonight. One of the things, Charles, I thought would be fun to talk about is the relationship between art and money and creativity. Sometimes when you have more money, you would think you could be more creative, but that's not always true, is it?
I don't know.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Find out.
It depends on who's holding the purse strings.
Who's writing the check?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to tap into Charles's deep well of wisdom tonight on that one, because I know you've got experience of that.
Well, it's called who you going to tap
And I thought the other thing would be fun to talk about tonight is the idea of good taste in art. Do you have to have one? Do you have to have good taste to have good art? I thought it'd be fun.
Does it exist?
Well, does it exist? And do you need it to have good art? We'll talk about that a little bit later. So I thought it'd be some fun things to talk about tonight. And, just as a tease, you know what's coming up next month? Something big, something special.
It's the biggest thing.
Is it my birthday?
No.
Well, I think we've already done that. That's pretty special. Birthday's a big deal. Oh, speaking of birthdays, by the way, last month we did have a birthday. We never did plug that like we should have. 39 years old.
Yeah.
And you look every year on it.
I don't know about that.
But we've got a big thing coming up next month. It's going to be our 4th anniversary of the ArtStreamLIVE webcast. Who would have ever thought?
4 years.
But 4 years.
4 years.
4 years. Can you believe it?
We are survivors.
Like I said, we're too hard-headed to quit, and too dumb and too hard-headed. So a little self-applause there. So we'll have some fun with that next month. So you're going to want to come back and join us for that. Probably at least an hour.
It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun.
It's going to go past my bedtime?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but we'll see. But
and most of it's free, but if you want to buy tickets, we can print some up.
Well, that's true because you're coming.
2 for 10 and 3 for 20.
Well,
That's
we were throwing out the idea of possibly, who knows, we could have what do we call it? Not the best of ArtStream.
The almost best.
The almost best of ArtStreamLIVE. Maybe a possible DVD to give away to viewers if they want.
You got to watch, though.
You got to watch to get it.
Is it going to be dancing girls and camels and stuff?
Well, we may have some dancing chickens.
Hey, now we're talking.
I think Big Buck ought to get a good plug. He's been with us all 4 years.
Yeah, he's been in every shot.
And he works for Chicken Feeds.
My favorite.
He has been a faithful mascot, so we'll probably give him a plug. But that's going to come up next month. We got a good thing to do tonight. We're in the month of November. It's fall. It's beautiful weather we're having. We're in our secret studio location somewhere in L.A. or Alabama.
Right.
And so why don't we kick in that video, kind of get things warmed up. We'll come back and open up our first idea session tonight.
Here we go.
All right.
So in the beginning, I was high as a kite, and it was all for the taking, and it was just this mystery. I was so wrapped up in the mystery of it. And that mystical element of the craft, I think, is what really sustained me for a really long time. Now, 12 years later, what has happened a bit is that, the Wizard of Oz has been revealed, and sometimes he's a small little man, scared little man who, doesn't have much to say. And sometimes it's tough to get back to that place of innocence. It's tough to get back to that place of, real, pure love for the craft.
When I was first starting out, I kind of thought that every project was just, if there was a scale of coolness versus budget, I guess, I thought it was completely random. And that the more money that you had was completely incidental based on the project. It was never directly relevant. But as time went on, I realized it's like a perfect sliding scale, and the more creatively bankrupt a project is, the more money there is in play. So you have pharmaceutical ads, smoking ads, cat food website. And you work your way down, and as you work your way down, there's less money in play, but there's more creative. And as you go down the scale, you get to big brands like Coca-Cola, Nike, and then you go further down the scale and you get to MTV, youth brands like Vice, Red Bull, Adidas, I guess sometimes. And and there's like less and less money at play because it's like cooler opportunities, cooler projects. And then you get all the way down to like the 0 mark. And the 0 mark is where it's very, very creative for the most part, but there's no money, and there's almost no money or no money. And then you get to the other end of the spectrum, which is not only is this not going to make you any money, it's going to start to cost you money to make it. And that's where all of the artistic integrity is, and where you're going to do something pure and that you're really excited about, where it starts to cost you resources.
I think when it comes down to it, no matter how corporate you are or how business-oriented you are, everyone's kind of got that same feeling of like, I just want to do what I want.
I think it's natural for an artist who's already naturally an isolator. It's natural for a filmmaker to think like, man, if I just get away from all this money and these people and these things and I'm just by myself with my canvas, with my little film, then it'll be better.
The commercial space is very much about letting go of all of your vision, I guess, and giving people what they want and not really like being precious about it. Because it's not cool. Like, whatever you're doing is not cool. No matter how cool it is, it's still a commercial, right?
Being like, I think the drive and the intention that will sustain a creative individual for a really long time is doing it because they love it.
If you can find out what it is that you really want to be doing and just do it and just do that at whatever level you can, everything else starts to slip away, right? If you're doing what you love every day of your life, then things like your personal life and your finances and stuff, it's no longer a priority, or it's no longer the first priority. And I think that leads to a more like fulfilled life, right?
I had always spent so much of my life trying to plan 5 and 10 years into the future and say, well, if I want this, then I'm going to have to do this for that many years. And every time I did that, it really put me in a really weird position where failure was the only thing that really came from it. As soon as I kind of dropped that whole like trying to plan out my future and just lived in the day, lived in the now, all that stuff started happening at the pace that I wanted it to happen at, because I focused on just doing things as opposed to the end results. You can't get from the start to the finish without running the race. You have to focus on each step as opposed to just like looking at the finish line and hoping that someone will pick you up in a car and drop you off there.
So in the beginning...
All right.
Very good.
No,
Like
very
that.
good. I like that guy's categories. He talked about creativity versus money, the amount of money, and then you got down to that last category where the creativity actually cost you money.
Yeah.
And I knew then that we found right where ArtStreamLIVE has been at. Because we do try to be creative.
We're very creative.
And it does cost us money, so we're right in that category.
Well, yeah, when you start with 0 and it end with 0.
Well, I'm not sure if that category is he was working to the top or
Well,
working to the bottom.
but it does give us the freedom to do things we want to do. I mean, we've had some pretty neat episodes where Charles has asked some pretty amazing questions, and we could use our creative efforts to go in and answer. But, I think, I know the guy came from a point of commercial art more, but the idea that, usually when people give you a lot of money for something, they want something back. And like Charles, like you were saying off camera there, you're talking about, when you do a project and then you have to call somebody up to get approval. You're not into that when you're an artist, are you?
Well, it's how pure are you? If you're looking at want to go the purest route, whereas am I doing my thing and then I go out there and I present it as a unit and then try to generate income, that's fine. But to go in and have somebody come in to approve it, whereas you independent,
Right.
or even you take a commission and then you got to stop and then ask this question. Because when you do a commission, all your energy is tied into that commission and you trying to actually satisfy this person. You're trying to get into this person's head to see, is this really what they want? Because I don't want that disappointment versus me doing my own thing, and then I just put it out there, and then
find somebody.
and you find somebody and say, "Well, I like that."
Well, that's
when you
one
get,
thing about
but
the
when you
art
get,
shows, it's good. You got a chance to find that person.
yeah, but if you take the money and now you got to do the song and dance because they said, "Well, I don't like that,"
Yeah.
and you got to do it all over again. Then again, you got the pressure.
You use a nice black glaze and go, I like red. Oh,
Well, you get,
it's like our little graphic right down there. Small money, bigger art.
Well, you get to the point where it's
big money, small art.
yeah. Well, it's mind-boggling because you get people's perception of blue. My perception is totally different. They say, I wanted blue. And then when you do the piece, they come in and say, well, that's not the blue I want.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're thrown off.
Well, I always thought that for portrait artists, it's really difficult because you're dealing with, something much different. If anybody's ever done any type of portrait artwork, they'll know that you may think it's the greatest piece you've ever done, but it's going to take one family member to go, I think the nose looks funny.
I did one.
And that throw the whole thing.
I did one portrait, decided I'd never do another one.
But it's
they do that. Say, oh, well, that baby head is not that big. And you sit there and let
I'm afraid it is. But yeah, sometimes they want you to paint them the way they see them, and you can't do that. But it's like the guy said in the video, so no matter how corporate you are, when you're an artist, you want to do
what you want to do.
And that's, I know that sounds selfish, but when you're the artist, art's not a corporate thing.
But what do you give up when what do you give up when you take the man's money?
I guess if you're in an animation studio, it's more corporate.
You give up
but
control.
even then,
Yeah, you give up control.
Right. And now I've met a few artists in my life, and a very few over all these years, that they had a real patron that would give support, money. I've actually met artists that patrons would go out and sell their art for them. No strings attached. They believed in that person's vision so much that I thought, man, that's incredible. That's like an angel coming down.
When you have
I remember the artist you're talking about.
Yeah, right. And I met a couple artists like that. But that's rare. But yeah, I think there is a correlation between the amount of money and the creativity, the creative freedom.
But they just throw out the corporate side. But if you had more art angels, the collectors, and they understand that because they're educated and they know. I don't want to dictate. I just want to have a part of this guy's soul. I want to have a part of his being and let him take. And when you get that, then that's nothing but freedom. But to go in and say, well, I want you to do this, I want to do that, you don't have that.
No, you don't. And now you brought up a point I've seen in my experience too, in a way, with the collector can be inhibited to creative freedom when it gets like, when they've supported your vision, and let's say as you create, you want, and I know you change over time, you're gradual, but you've never made a change in your pottery that didn't have a reason from the past. In other words, you don't do it just for the sake of it. You evolve. You take a step up. You get a new idea, a different shape, combine it from the past. You got a new piece. So you change your work, and your work grows. And your collectors have gone along with that. But I met collectors who go, what did you change for? I want it to be like you used to do. You know what I'm saying? And when they do that, then you're almost locked in. You got to do the same thing over and over and over for your collector.
Well, it's called how much money they throw at you, and according to your lifestyle. Now, you get caught up in that deal where you got this expensive lifestyle, and they're supporting you, then you got to dance to that tune if you want to keep it up. You always had the freedom to jump ship.
Yeah, you do, and you may pay a price financially for it. But
you might
collectors are open to change.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
But it's that report. It's not that you're doing a commission. If they're going to buy what you do, and they say, well, I got a lot of it. Can you do something a little smaller? But I still want to collect. And if you want to go with it, all well and good. Because some people just love to do big. And that's how they get total control because of the body movement and the way they work. And if you got a collector that wants small, that's just an individual call.
And folks, thus the rarity of the Charles Smith coffee mug.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Oh, and everybody know that. I being a potter, I don't like doing mugs.
Right. But when you do them,
I don't have anything against mugs. I just don't like doing them.
And your mugs have been wonderful.
Yeah, but
anytime you've done them, have they not gone poof?
Well, yeah, but it's a lot of work in doing the mug. I mean, it's just too complex. Right. It's simple, but it's complex, and it's not that personal. I can't swing and that's what I'm saying. Big, certain formats, I can really work around and get my little 5 minutes or 10-minute energy into it. versus a mug.
And
I mean, a mug, but to me, it just got a front and a back, and I don't like that because I got to put a handle on it.
And I know David's run into that issue with collectors because of the screen printing of serigraphs and his allergic reaction to the inks. He had to totally change medium, and there were a lot of folks that didn't want to go with that change.
I probably lost 2/3 of my
Yeah,
collectors.
you probably did,
Yeah, but you had to do it simply because it was a health risk.
But his creativity flowed over into the mixoglyphs and the paper. So, I mean, he had the same level, and I thought that was amazing the change he made.
The number of awards I got doubled.
Yeah, right.
I actually, 2 or 3 years into the mixed glyphs, I probably had more collectors.
Right.
And they were collecting at a higher level. So in the end, it worked out great that I was able to do what I wanted to do and eventually found the collectors for it. But it's a difficult thing to do, and most artists are, I guess, psychologically locked into certain their certain style, whatever their style is. I mean, I've actually talked to artists who've told me that they're afraid to even change their palette, even add a color to their palette, because their collectors are that specific.
Yeah, and unfortunately, artists need income too. You got to pay mortgage, buy food, pay the bills. It's always good to do that.
You want
so there are realities.
Yeah, you want the same thing everybody else wants. You want a quality of life.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you got people that come in, and I think that a lot of that is a bunch of crap. If we can say crap, but let's say crap anyway. But they buy into that, and artists are their own worst enemy because they go in with that starving. I don't know who thought of it, who promoted it, and who set it up for failure, because that's what it is. They set themselves up for failure when they go in, oh, you're starving artist, or you got to suffer for your craft. You don't.
No.
You don't have to do that.
No, I think there have been a
you
lot of artists
the
who
market.
rather not suffer. Absolutely.
Well, if you got the ones that want to suffer for it, I mean, let them have at it. But they're not going to get into sympathy for me.
Well, I think you brought a good lead into the next topic, because that's where the idea of good taste and good art come in. And I found an article that Dave can bring up. The gentleman named Paul Graham wrote an interesting article, How Art Can Be Good, and he talks about a relationship to good taste in art. And one of the things he brought up to start with is the idea, he basically claims that you have to have good taste in order to have good art. One can't exist without the other. Because if you can't distinguish, how do you know? And some people are better at that than others, and I agree with that basic premise. So I thought that would be something fun, too, to talk about. Because like what you're talking about, I think David made the change in medium, but I think if anyone had good taste, they would know that even though it was a new medium, the quality was still there.
The quality
was still there. So I think, sometimes these preconceived concepts lock people in like you've been talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring my notes over here a little bit. And I think we've got some examples. But I think, because some people say taste is a relative thing. And Mr. Graham's point is that, no, he actually believes there's some objective truths behind taste that are based on how people are. And some of these things, the first thing he said is that when you do art, and I think we'd all agree with this.
In other words, there are physiological reasons for
it. But you need an audience. If you're going to make art, now making art for us is a pleasure. Something you enjoy doing. But once you've done it, what are you going to do? Store it in the studio? What do you do with it? Now, you post it on Facebook. You've been to art shows. David's done the same, gallery shows. You try to get it out. But you've got to have an audience for that.
You got to have an audience. You got to find out who's going to respond to it. You're not going to cater to everybody. So that's
you're not.
And you have some people thinking that they're going to go out and conquer the world, that they're going to do the Walmart theory, that they're going to sell to everybody. We don't do that.
No, I don't.
You just got to get to the one that's going to gravitate to you, and then you can do one-on-one.
Well, bring up that first graphic. It's like you're bringing up a good point. Some art would be shocking. There was once a shock value for people. So a piece like that, that's going to have a limited audience. There are people.
Not everybody wants that in their living room.
That's somebody we featured in one of our our art theater programs. That's Damien Hirst. Shock value. So there are some people that appeal to. Well, other art might be more pleasing. Now, I would say that most people would probably prefer that. So you may not get everybody, but you would probably appeal to more people. And so the point of his he says when you study people, and he says this goes across cultures and the globe, and when you look at people, certain things will appeal to people in art. Like one of the first things he says is face recognition.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people like images with a face.
Mm-hmm.
Now, commercial art uses this a lot. Advertising uses that a lot. I was talking to David earlier, like a lot of magazine articles, newspaper articles, even on the web. When you've got a blog, usually they'll put a picture of the author who wrote it because people are drawn to that, and it visually brings it to the article. So a lot of people that's one of the things we found common in art, and that doesn't mean you always want to have faces in art, but it's something common to people. Now, another idea he had, and he says these things will overlap when you study people, was the idea of primary colors. A lot of people like artwork with color. Now, see, I think for you, as a 3D potter, I wonder if you would find out, like, your red pots. You've done a lot of red pottery. You've used the blue.
Yellow recently.
Yeah, and even the green. Now, green's secondary, but people, I think these colors appeal to people.
Well, what I found out, it was a solid color versus doing these multi. Some people can get away with it.
Yeah.
But it's more of a timing element in it. You don't throw everything in them at one time. No. You get to just throw everything you know at them. Mm-hmm. And I found that years ago that you sort of move things along in increments. And this way you can have something to always experiment, and you can introduce to your audience.
Yeah, so what he's found is that certain common threads run throughout the human race. And it doesn't matter what culture, it's common to most people. Now, another thing he brought up is a lot of people, and I know I found this to be true, a lot of people are always amazed with three-dimensional artwork. Mm-hmm. They like things that look like, well, that's our primary. That's another good example of the primary.
Well, it's got the
yeah. A lot of primary color, strong color, and then a lot of folks are interested in things that look three-dimensional. Mm-hmm. Now, I will, and I think, too, that's another thing I think with Charles, is a lot of times we found that folks would be attracted to three-dimensional artwork, craft-oriented things, versus maybe the art as much, because they always felt like, and it just makes sense, they always had room for another piece of nice pottery, or maybe a wall was filled up. But people like three-dimensional. But I found in my art, if I could have a little sense of depth to it, people were more attracted to it.
Three-dimensional is out. You're gonna be exposed to it when you wake up.
Yeah, you are.
You know, is that space and mass?
And that might be something.
And you keep it. And with me, I like to keep it simple.
That's something you also can pick out.
Yeah,
but the point you said, when you wake up, you see it. Well, that's ingrained in the human psyche. We're hardwired that way. So he's not saying that artists need to just do this to tap into that, but what he's trying to find out are what are the things that are common to an audience that affect taste in art. Another issue we brought up was the idea of a lot of people like things that are sharper and crisper in artwork instead of versus blurry. Mm-hmm. And what I guess sometimes not, another example, this is more of a blurred piece, more of a color field effect. Mm-hmm. But they find people tend to like things more defined. And that's one thing, again, with I love your pottery for that. Clean, crisp edges, your sense of pattern. Well, all that's part of it.
If you're looking at things that's blurry, it always affects that it's more of an age. You start saying, well, that's blurry.
That's your vision going.
Wait a minute now, that's what are you trying to say? So if it's crisp, you figure like, oh, I'm on point.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, right. Mm-hmm. But what the point he's making, though, is that people's preferences are not a random thing. They're actually measurable and objective. And he's not saying everybody, but a large majority of the human race, they have found these are things that people find appealing, and it affects their taste in art. So good art can bring these things in. And what he's saying is that objects that have these properties may be more appealing on a taste level. That doesn't mean you have to use them. It doesn't mean you can't break the rules. But what he's going to get into, too, he says that's the reason, like, all right, bring up that other graphic. Like, you've got a blank canvas. And I've seen art like this in the museum world. I've seen white on white, and it's blank. Now, most people would prefer the next image over the blank canvas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're familiar with that.
Well, not only that,
it tells a story.
But it has these characteristics that are in the object.
It's three-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's humans they can relate to.
Yeah, and it has these things that people are just normally attracted to.
Color.
Now, the point is, he's not saying that art should be democratic, because then you're going to get into the issue, well, then we should vote. And this is the point you brought up. Some artists do that. Well, I'm just going to do what everybody likes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's put it to a vote. Well, I like puppy dogs and grass, you know. Well, I guess you can paint that all day long if you want. You may make a lot of money. But he's not saying make art democratic, because he's saying that actually, because there are levels of taste that will appeal to different folks. And it's like, he brought up the idea, go ahead and show that. He brought up the idea of the Mona Lisa. Like, you brought up an issue. That is a brand in art. It's so well known. It's almost like a brand. You know, people talk about getting a brand on your product. Everybody knows that image. Mm-hmm. But he said if you were actually go to the Louvre in Paris to try to experience seeing it, you're going to be in a room. It's behind glass. It's a lot smaller than you think it is. Mm-hmm. It's a lot darker. You probably can't get to it because you got people standing by getting a photograph made. So you're not really going to get to experience it. So you're probably not going to be as impressed as you would have been just looking at reproductions. Mm-hmm. And I can say for me, having been in a lot of museums, I've seen art by famous artists. When I got in front of the real thing, I was kind of like, I'm not so hot on this anymore. I'm a little disappointed. Now, I've seen Picassos that were beautifully done, but I've seen other ones that you could tell, all of us could tell, the guy knocked it out in 3 minutes.
Is that the market? Is that the market? Is that market?
Well, he had the name. Well, he had the brand to get away with it.
If you look at some of the quotes that Picasso himself said about his own artwork, he knocked a lot of stuff out because he knew there was a price on it.
But I think artists have an advantage having...
He took advantage.
We have an advantage having made art. You can actually see how it's made and react to it that way, too, which affects my taste. Now, all right, somebody like Gauguin, I've seen a lot of reproductions, and they always look flat to me. But when I could actually go look at one of his paintings, I was much more impressed because I could stand... One of the things he brings up in the article is it's good for people to stand close to a painting. Don't get the reproduction view way back. Get up and look at the thing up close. Look at how it's made, and that affects how I feel about my taste in the art. And is it good art? When I can see the hands-on and realize, boy, this guy, what he did here is incredible. And I know you do it with pottery, when you can go look at three-dimensional things, sculpture. That's why I like your stuff. And the way you do it, I can see it.
Well, you got to put the wow factor in it because you've already studied the public. You know who you're dealing with. And if you can make it simple, because they expect for it to be complex. We did the complexity. We've taken that out. Yeah. So when we go in there and we knock it out and got all these years of experience, we know what colors we've got. We know the chemical makeup. And it's supposed to be easy because you got those years. So you give them that wow factor. Now that they got the wow factor, another point is to have the collectors because the collectors going to have that progression. So if you decide to change, then you got somebody to tell the stories that he changed at this point. Or he got older, this is the reason this was like so. And that's why you need collectors, and then that's why you need to have these different points where folks can actually say, well, how did he do that? Because at a certain point, you're going to forget how you did it.
And I think you have come by that totally on a natural level. Like I said, that's what I love about your work. I've heard people say, oh, Charles' work's the same. And I said, no, it's not. I've known Charles for over 20 years, and I can show you things from 20 years ago and show you today, and your work has progressed. One of the things I love about what you've done is some of the tops of your vessels you've made the shapes curve, which reflect the patterns. You've actually taken the two-dimensional pattern, brought it in three-dimensional form. That's an evolution that makes perfect sense in your work. It's natural. It makes sense. It fits. And it makes the work better.
That's true, but
then... make a slight correction.
Yes, sir.
It's 30 years.
30 years, you're right. It is 30
You're older than that.
But you told me you were 39. You threw me off.
But see, that's still is that evolvement, but within that evolvement, it's still the education because what you're doing is pulling from other culture. So you're seeing that, and then that's bringing that whole different audience.
Good point, because he brings it up. He says the way to avoid traps of technique, and we'll get into some of the traps of art, is to, like you're saying, look at different cultures, look at different art, look at different things. Beauty of the internet, you've got that available now. You can look at all these different things. Because he says, there are things that will trap audiences at a certain level. Like he talked about when he was 10 years old, he loved the effect of the airbrush metallic letters, we've all seen on the T-shirt guys. And he said he thought that was the coolest thing at 10 years old. But now that he's older, he goes, I can look at it now and it's kind of cheesy. So the technique you've got to watch out for that. And the other issue you brought up, like bring up that next one, is, and this traps people at the high end, the avant-garde. What about what the critics say? The art elite. Sometimes they spend more time on telling you why, like I said, you can have an example of a white on white canvas. That you go there and go, okay, I got this hooked in 15 seconds, and it took this guy 2 hours to explain to me why it's important. That's a trap.
Well, it's a trap.
That's a trap.
Then you look at the survival end. If you get to the point of saying, okay, this critic can make or break you. So if I get a good critic that's working with the New York Times, and hey, all of a sudden things just break.
What does that mean? The art actually has good taste?
It hasn't changed.
I don't think the art has. Yeah.
But how many people fall for that?
There are a lot of people fall
But then
for
again,
it.
if you got it as self-worth and the guy give you a bad review, are you going to be looking for a bridge to jump off of? No. So you just said that, no, because I got backup, because I got people that's going to support me, because that's when you go back to your collectors.
Right.
Because those are the ones that's going to console you. This is just this one guy's opinion.
Yeah, it is.
If it went to my advantage, then it won't. But then again, I'm not going to be upset, because you can actually do one-on-one and tell him you could.
And that's how come you need to look at a lot of different things and realize we all bring our baggage visually. Everybody does.
But that's the business of art, because a lot of people don't understand that. That it's 50-50.
But there are levels of objectivity in good taste, and some people are better at it. And my point being with those examples is that, we have what we call the low-end art, okay. And there is an audience for it. Maybe they never get beyond that. But I'm saying it's the same thing at the upper level with what we would call the avant-garde elitist or the academians. I think a curator that has been an artist is better qualified than just a purely academic curator.
Right.
Because I think when you know how it's made and what goes, it's like David Hockney talking about certain things and techniques in art that were used in the Renaissance that he believes were used because he can see it because he's made it. For people that don't, I think that's an advantage, and you've got to be careful at both ends of the spectrum. Because like the guy, one of the things he brought up, and I know we'll hurry up, but he talks about that for products like an apple, you could put it to a vote, or a restaurant. What's the best place to eat? Well, a lot of people say this is good, I'm going to take the word for it. But I don't necessarily have to do that in the world of man-made objects and art. Because you may have a piece of art that we know that might appeal to a younger age group. That we know, well, that's good for that age when you're a kid, but when you get older, you realize, well, no. So you got to watch that in the world of art and the idea. So these are some of the traps that you got to kind of be careful of when you get into the artwork and the ideas of taste. And the way he ended the article up is that he talked about when he was in college, when he started art school, they were looking at some 15th century Renaissance art. And one of the students asked the question, hey, why don't we paint like that now? And it was like a silent hush, like, oh, you would have thought you had something really bad. And the professor told him, well, we just have different questions we're trying to answer today. But I've often thought the same thing. Why can't you paint like that? Now, you're going to get into ideas, well, are you doing something new? Well, who is doing something new? Just because it's new doesn't mean it's done in good taste.
Yeah, it's like the old saying, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
Well, really, the guy asked the question, why don't we paint like that? But do he have the time?
Well, in other words, would he go back in time and tell the guy, hey, what you're doing isn't relevant? I mean, no, it is. And it's like I'm saying, we could go out now, probably out in the middle of an intersection and do something crazy, throw paint all over cars, or throw it over the road, and people drive through it, get a lot of people pissed off. But I bet we make the news tonight.
Sure.
Now, it may not be good news, and it may not be good taste, but we would be noticed that we did something different. That's my point. That doesn't mean it's in good taste or good art. That's the point. And like I said, I thought it was an interesting thing, and interesting argument. If people have a comment, what they think, we're willing to hear.
Yeah, we got the chat window here. They can
chat window, and but I thought it was a fun thing, and like I said, I brought my little notes, but. I think good taste, I think he's right. Good taste does go beyond the subjective. I don't think good taste is necessarily relative. I think he makes the point with some of the points he brought up about human beings and how we're hardwired. And it goes across all culture. And so I think there are standards for good taste.
Well, yeah, you got to have good taste. I mean, you just don't want to have a mix of good and bad in a collection. If you into that.
Well, this goes back. This argument goes way back. I mean, I remember having this same argument with one of my art professors in college. We would argue that the difference between subjective and objective in art.
Mm-hmm.
And my stance was that there was more subjective than objective. He came to from the point of view, more like this guy, I guess, at that point in time, that it was more that he actually told me that art was 100% objective, and
Well, I can't go there.
I can't go there. I just told him that's impossible. We're human beings, so we can't be 100% objective.
No, we can't. And where the balance line is, I don't know.
No, I think it's constantly shifting.
And it's like he did say in the article, he did say it's not true for everybody, but he said for a large majority it is. So but it's like anything else. You don't want to just get so locked into it that you don't trust something because you.
Well, yeah, I mean, being a working artist, how much art education do you need?
That's a whole different program.
Yeah. Are you on the academic end?
Well,
we can get
maybe we can get into that next month a little bit with the idea of folk art. How much education you really need?
Yeah.
Like David said, was Van Gogh a folk artist?
According to the strict definition of what folk art is, he was a folk artist.
He could have been a folk artist. Think about it. Well, we might talk about that next month. That might be something fun to get into. But yeah, if you guys tell us what you think, send us an email.
ArtStreamLIve@gmail.com.
Yeah, drop a line on Facebook where we're at and tell us what you think about what we talked about tonight. Because these are things that interest us and hopefully they interest you. And
yeah, if there's subjects that they would like to either participate in or like us to tackle, send it to us.
And like I said, Charles, I think once again, thank you for the wisdom from the deep well of Charles Smith wisdom.
Yeah,
I agree.
We're thankful for that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Okay. You have lived up to the Sage of Wisdom title we bestow upon you.
That's right.
All right. Oh, yeah. And by the way, I dug back into our family album.
Ooh.
You know, it goes way back. And this time of the month coming up, you know, we have a lot to be thankful for. And
his buckle's bigger than ours.
Well, he's a special kind of guy. And, you know, I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Take a minute to think about what you have in life and be thankful for it. And because that's coming up this month. And plus, we want to always remember our veterans. And, Charles, we appreciate what you've done for the country. I know you served. I know it wasn't the most popular time to serve, but you did it. So thank you very much. And I think, anything else you guys would like to add to tonight?
You got change for 5?
Well, I'll have to dig deep, but I might be able to scrounge it up. We'll have to see.
I got it at nickels.
Nah, bag of nickels over here.
Well, remember that bit about the creativity versus money and how we tend to spend money and not make money? That tells you where my wallet's at. So I appreciate everybody coming on tonight and watching.
He's enjoying a very high point in his creativity.
Yes, he is.
Who?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But it's all inversely proportional.
That's right.
But we appreciate you watching, and check out our other episodes at Ustream and the archive we've got there.
Yeah.
Some are on we got them on YouTube.
YouTube, they can find us just searching ArtStream.
We're not hard to find, no.
Yeah.
And we appreciate everybody when you watch and keep up with us. We enjoy it. It's fun, and hope you have a good month. And I guess it's time to sign off. Say goodnight.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Wave Big Buck goodbye real quick. He'd like to say goodnight. All right.
There you go.